Hi, welcome to Senior Moment, Successful Aging. I'm your host, Mary Beals-Luedtke. I'm the Director for Area Agency on Aging at NACOG, and you can reach us toll-free at 877-521-3500. Senior Moment, Successful Aging is co-sponsored with the Division of Lifelong Learning at Yavapai College. You can reach Yavapai College and our producer at 717-7607. So Nancy Bennett has been our producer for some time, and we are welcoming aboard a new producer, Danny Tomerlin. So welcome, Danny, to the club. And Danny will be doing all that behind-the-scene work, and I just talk at you. So again, welcome to Senior Moment, Successful Aging. Our guest today is Terri Roza. Hi, Terri.
Hi.
How are you?
Oh, I'm good.
Good. Terri Roza is with the Senior Peer Prevention Program, and you manage that program.
I do.
Okay, so
I do.
welcome.
Many people ask me why the word prevention is in there.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the reason that the word prevention is in there is because we're trying to prevent aging. I'm 105. I just wanted you to know that before we get going here. So I think we're doing a good job.
And Terry's funny. I like that. That's good, because humor is a really
Absolutely.
important part of health.
Absolutely it is.
You know, you got to laugh. Kids laugh how many times a day, and then we just really come under that.
I know.
You know, so we
Way
got to
under.
laugh more.
Yeah,
Way
we
under.
do.
So really we're here to talk about depression.
Yes, we are.
And the risk factors, and why is depression different among older adults than it is for the general population?
Yeah. Depression is really something that sneaks up on us. You know, we're living our life and we're doing okay, and then all of a sudden we have a loss in our family, or all of a sudden we decide to retire. And as soon as we retire, we lose our jobs. Now, people don't realize that. They go, oh, I choose to retire. Wait a minute. Yeah, you did, but you still have a loss.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that loss is about not only that job, but your friends at the job, all of your contacts at the job, all of your identity that went with the job. All those things are lost, not just the job. And so that's one factor that starts to affect people. And so it's really a good idea that they find something else to do.
Got to have a purpose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have a new purpose after they retire.
You know, because that scares me. It's like, okay, I'm never retiring. Because I do
Right.
identify with my job, and I identify with everybody there. I've been there so long.
Exactly.
I can't even imagine. So there's a lot of risk factors involved around depression.
There are. Some of the risk factors involved are that you are female. You have a higher chance of being depressed. That you are single. Now, this really affects men. Men who become single are the ones who really suffer. They don't know how to cook sometimes. They don't know how to take care of themselves sometimes. They've been taken care of by their wife, and if their wife passes, then, those widowed individuals really have a hard time. The second largest group of people who commit suicide in the United States are 85-year-old men.
Oh my gosh.
And they do it with a gun.
Oh my gosh.
And they just were edged out by the 45 to 64 group of individuals by like decimal points. Mm-hmm. So the two of them are kind of tied at the top there as to who commits suicide more.
Now, and we have a really high incidence in Yavapai County, don't we?
We do. We do. It kind of goes up and down. The highest incidence we had was in 2010 when it was about 44 out of every 100,000. Now, you compare that to the state of Arizona, and the state of Arizona is somewhere around 20, usually. But you compare it to the United States, and it's around 14 in the United States. So in that year, we were super high. And, we outdid all the other counties in the state. And people ask why, and I don't have an answer for that.
Yeah.
I don't have an answer for that.
You think we have a sunshine state. I know a lot of folks move out here and then lose their support system, and then
Absolutely.
who they came out here with passes, and then there they are.
Exactly.
They don't have that
Well, and
family.
so many people come out here by themselves.
Yeah.
Or with just a spouse.
Yeah.
The rest of their family's back in New York or Oregon or wherever.
And you've got to have, and then if they don't get involved in socialization, which we try to work on at the Area Agency on Aging, and keep people engaged, because isolation is a risk factor.
Right, isolation, which creates loneliness.
Yeah.
And it's those two factors together that create the depression. And we know that suicide is the number one reason for suicide is untreated depression.
So
why?
Yeah, why is it untreated?
Yeah, why do people not get treatment for their depression?
Well, I mean, I think overall in the general population there's still a stigma.
Yes.
But I think it's even worse with the elder population.
Well, I think what people have to understand is that depression really is a physiological kind of event that happens to us. So we have neurotransmitters in our brain. We have dopamine, we have norepinephrine, and we have that elusive serotonin, which is the one that really helps us with well-being. And those can be affected by our environment and by environmental causes. So losses that happen in the environment can affect those levels. It seems odd, but this is what affects those. So if I went to the doctor and the doctor said, you have diabetes, you need to be taking insulin, would I refuse that?
No.
No. But if I go in and I say, I'm feeling depressed and I'm not feeling myself, and I'm offered an antidepressant, many times people don't take that. And it's the antidepressant that works on those neurotransmitters to help them function at a better level.
So there's actual physical stuff going on in our head that can be treated by medication.
Right.
And people won't take it.
No.
I don't understand that either. And I think part of, hopefully this conversation will help folks maybe open up some more conversations about, it's a medication.
Right.
It's
a medication to help chemicals in our brain.
Yeah.
It's not something that tells us that we're weak-minded.
That's the biggie right there. Yeah.
Exactly.
I'm too strong.
I can't handle my own life. Well, that's not it at all. You're being affected by neurochemicals in your brain that are saying, just lay low, just kind of, and you get depressed.
Yeah. It's like, okay, I need some help. Oh my gosh.
I do.
So, again, that weak-mindedness thing, my family was like, never air your dirty laundry outside the family, never talk to anybody about your problems. It's like, wait a minute. Sometimes the best person to talk to is not in the family.
Right. So not only medication, but certainly counseling is those two things together can really help someone who has depression. The other thing that I've noted in people is that they don't think that their past life experiences are affecting them at this point in life. Well, when you have a new loss, it somehow, if you haven't addressed the others, gets attached to those other losses. And now all of a sudden, you not only have this loss, but you have everything all the way back to when you were 20 years old and your dog died.
It's amazing what you think you get through and you bury it instead of dealing with it. That's happened to me. And then a trigger comes.
Right.
And then you just relive the whole thing again. And you're like, whoa, I guess I need to address this now.
Exactly. Yeah. My father died when I was 20 in a car accident. And when I was 20 years later, when I was 40, all of a sudden, I was almost the age at which he had died.
Yeah.
And I went, I don't know if I can do this. And so I ended up in counseling to counsel about his death.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it doesn't go away. It really still is there. It's there as part of memory. It's there as part of our emotional responses that weren't played out at the time.
So it can build up. And I would imagine each time it would get worse, and so then we get to the elderly. So here we are.
We are.
How is depression different in the elderly?
Well, it's different in that when we become older, we start to experience a lot of life transitions, like from work to retirement, or from being married to being unmarried or widowed, or divorced even, or life transitions where we start to get sick, and we start to have mobility problems, or we start to have diabetes. Those kinds of things, those chronic illnesses, or other deaths outside of that. So a lot of people in my community, I live out in Chino, a lot of them have lived out on their pieces of property or their ranches for 40 years.
Yeah.
You know, and now somebody down the street dies, and it's a big thing for them.
Yeah.
Because they've lived there so long, they've taken care of each other so long, that it's like losing a family member.
A lot of loss.
A lot of loss.
Plus the past losses, all
Right.
round up. Another thing that when we talk about men being more likely to commit suicide, you know, I don't know about, my husband won't go to the doctor.
Absolutely.
So, you know, if they don't go to the doctor in the first place,
Right.
you know, and how do you get the word out for that? It's like, you know, just regular checkups could perhaps bring this to light.
Right. Especially, I'm thinking about women go to the doctor, right?
Yeah.
And there's a statistic out there that they take more antidepressants. But when they take more antidepressants is between the ages of 45 and 55.
Interesting.
What else happens during that time frame?
Menopause.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So we look at that, and now men especially will point to that and say, well, you're the one on an antidepressant, not me. Oh, well, but my estrogen just dropped from up here to down here, and therefore it's a reaction to that. Mm-hmm. So again, we're back to the chemical phases of what's going on here, and we just want to blame it on people's brains or their minds or something. You know, they can't handle things.
Their strength of character.
Yes, yeah.
Their strength of
Absolutely.
character comes to mind.
Yes.
You know, it's like, and men tend to be, and I'm not trying to be sexist, but men try to, you know, think more, I have to be strong. Mm-hmm. I can't.
Well, and I'm wondering if part of that isn't the reason for them being at a higher risk of suicide.
Yeah.
Is that, you know, in 2010, I talked about that being a high rate. In 2008, we had a big fall financially.
Yes.
Do men take that on as their responsibility? And when they can't fulfill that responsibility, do they then commit suicide?
Yeah. It makes you wonder, doesn't it?
It does.
It really makes you
does.
wonder. I know that you have a really important program that I want to talk about.
Yes.
To help mitigate depression.
Exactly.
And that's the senior peer program.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about that.
Well, what we do is we find peer volunteers in the community who are over the age of 60, who we then background check and fingerprint, and then we also give them 4 hours of training really about listening. And then we ask them to go out and visit lonely and isolated seniors just for an hour, hour and a half a week. Mm-hmm. And what we've discovered, we do the geriatric depression scale on assessment of that individual in their home. And then we do it again in 3 months. And then we do it again in 6 months. And what we see is that their depression scale goes down every time we do a new one. So it's like 78 to 85% go down.
Those are fabulous numbers.
Those are unbelievable numbers.
So the outcomes are really there.
Yes.
From this program.
They are. And it's not magic. It is community. It is asking people to go out and be personal and another person for this person to talk to, besides family members that they may not want to talk about their disabilities, or they may not want to talk about the fact that they think they're at the end of their life. They may not want to talk about that to their kids or to their husbands even.
Kids don't want to hear it. When it comes to end of life, I know, you know as well as I do,
Right.
even when the senior is ready to talk about it, the kids are like, oh no.
Right.
No, we're not going to talk about that. And I also find that a lot of war vets don't like to talk about the war with family.
Right.
And they got all this stuff in there.
And they will definitely talk to our volunteers.
Yeah.
We try and match male to male.
Nice.
And sometimes when we do that, we actually get 2 vets who are talking to one another. And that's really
nice.
a great thing for them to have.
Yeah.
We know World War II vets never came home and talked about those things.
No.
I don't know if it was part of their training, but they never came home and talked to people about it. Many times at the end of their life, they want to tell somebody, though.
Yeah.
And so then it all piles out, you know. But it would have been great if it had happened when they first got out.
Yeah. They could have got it off their chest a little bit better. Absolutely.
Yeah.
They're trying to be better with that, but still, I have a young nephew who went to Iraq, and, there's a lot of things I think that he still carries with him and doesn't talk about it, and he's young.
Yeah.
So,
Exactly.
I love the senior peer idea. So
the other thing we do besides individual is that we have groups throughout the communities.
Okay.
So the groups are run by volunteers, those same peer volunteers. So we have a women's group, a men's group, a hearing loss group, a vision loss group. And they're not talking about hearing devices or vision devices. They're talking about how it feels to be without your sight after having your sight all of your life. How it is to lose your hearing. How it is to lose the keys to the car.
Yeah.
In those women's groups and men's groups, they talk about that. How is that? That is horrible.
Yeah.
That's our loss of independence in this country.
Yeah, yes, it is. And especially when you live in the wild, wild west where we don't have public transportation. So that makes it even harder, I think, for our seniors in this area.
Does.
And again, they live out in the middle of nowhere on a ranch or out in the middle where there is no taxi service, no nothing.
Right.
Absolutely. And that makes it even harder.
It does.
So if I wanted to become a senior peer person, how would I go about doing that?
All you have to do is call me, and my number is 928-445-5211, and the extension is 2672, and that'll get you right into my phone.
Okay.
And we'll talk about it. We'll bring you in for an interview and just see what your ideas are about, being a volunteer and what we would like you to do for us. We're not going to push people into doing things that they don't want to do. No. There is always a little paperwork. That's how that's how we get our numbers. But but really, we have such a great group of volunteers. When I first started 2 years ago, we had 11 people as our volunteers. We're now up to about 45 people.
Nice.
Yes, and it's really they're great people. They're just great people. That's all I can say about them.
And it's therapeutic for them.
Absolutely.
I think that's one thing to really point out is that volunteers, it's a proven fact. You're healthier if you volunteer.
You're less depressed yes, you're much healthier, you're happier, and it's that feeling of giving to somebody else.
Yeah.
Now, could we get our communities so that they could do that? Yes, we could.
Yeah.
It's about people coming out of their houses and not being so isolated.
Yes. Yes, I have a story that I tell a lot, and I'm not going to go all the way through it because I tell it probably way too much, and it's about my neighbors and about being embarrassed that I didn't know them because somebody needed help. And so we really make it a point to watch over our elderly neighbors in particular. And my husband and the neighbor next door take turns watching over the gal that's widowed now. And one time the salespeople were over there too long, and my husband went over there and said, "Are you done?" And my husband's 6'6".
Yeah.
The salesman left, and she was so grateful. Little stuff happens, and we live in a very rural community. We have like 5 acres each, so but we can still see each other.
Right.
We can still see what's going on and check on each other, and I think that's a key too. Is we don't sit on our front porch enough.
That's a key.
Yeah.
Because now we've got 10,000 people turning 65 every day in our country.
Every day.
And by 2030, we will have 76 million people who will be over the age of 65. Do we believe that social services will be able to take care of those people? No. We need a community. We need a community effort of people in their own communities, whether that community is 3 blocks or whether that community is 5 miles.
Exactly.
Taking care of one another, reaching out to one another.
They always say it takes a village to raise a child, but it takes a village to watch after each other too.
It does.
It's not just one age group. It's all the way through the continuum. I grew up in a really small town, so everybody knew everybody. You got in trouble, your dad knew before you got home.
I grew up in Chicago, but our neighborhood was like that.
Yeah.
If I went down the street and did something wrong, Mrs. Speaker was right there to tell me about it, and I had to go home and then tell my mom about it. And
yeah, and we made sure that everybody got out, and like when we have a party out at the house, we invite all the neighbors so they can come over and sit and enjoy and watch everybody run around and the kids. And I think it's important for that intergenerational piece.
Yes.
As well,
Yes.
so to be involved. So for the senior peer program, how often do they work? What's their average time they spend on the job?
It's just like, say, 2 hours a week.
Okay.
And
That's easy.
so that's about 8 hours a month. And let me see, but so many of them, they're calling their participant in between. And so sometimes it's a little bit longer, but that's their choice.
That's their
it's a
choice.
choice thing. Yeah.
Yeah. So how, if I was a senior peer companion, how many folks do I usually take on?
One.
See, that's really special.
Just one. We know that people are volunteering
Yeah.
outside of our program, but one. And when we get to the place where we think we're going to have a list, I'm very leery about a list because we're talking about at-risk people.
Yeah.
So we reached out to our volunteers and they said, oh, I'll call somebody. Oh, I'll go out and see somebody else.
Nice.
So, yeah, it was great.
Yeah.
It was
'cause I
great
would
to have those people. Right.
I imagine after time you're going to get very attached to the person that you go see.
Very attached.
You know, kind of a
Very,
pseudo
very
family member
attached.
after a while.
Right.
I would think. I know that our care coordinators, even just seeing folks every 3 months, you know, those are their people.
Exactly.
You know,
You do. It's family now.
Yeah, it is, and that makes a big difference if you've got someone else that you know cares about you.
Right.
If nobody cares about you, then you start thinking, I don't care about myself. Nobody cares. And then it all rolls back into that depression and those things. So in the support groups, those are also to help with depression, right?
Right.
Okay.
The whole thing is connection.
Okay.
There was a study that came out in January of 2015 where they looked at people's connection. Now, it wasn't some senior magazine. This was a study that was done by neurologists, and they looked at the connections between people, whether they had a lot of connections or whether they had no connections, and how that affected Alzheimer's or dementia. And what they found was that the people who had a lot of connections rarely got Alzheimer's.
Interesting.
Yeah, so I'm like, throw away those puzzles. Get
Yeah.
rid of those books.
Get out.
Get outside and get connected.
Wow, I didn't realize that. That makes you wonder.
I know. It's an
Yeah.
amazing study. I was very floored by it. It was like, whoa.
Interesting, because we're still grappling with what causes dementia and what
Right.
are all those things, and
Right.
how do you keep your mind active, brain health, all those things.
Eating, sugar,
Right.
all of that stuff.
Yeah.
But what they did was isolate those connections.
Wow. Very, very interesting. So you mentioned, I'm going to be a senior peer person. I'm committing to a couple hours a week.
Right.
I can do more if I want.
Sure.
But you do go through the background check.
Yes.
Which is pretty much anything. Anytime we have an area agency on aging volunteer, the same thing. They have to do the level 1 fingerprint card and the background check, and that's to keep our seniors safe.
Right.
From
Right,
somebody
yeah.
volunteering. But then, what kind of training do I get?
Well, I have this wonderful person who works in the department with me. There's just the two of us. And Susan will sit down and she is the most quiet and kind of informative individual. She has a degree in philosophy, so that's all I'll say about her. And she'll sit down and do 4 hours talking about all the different things that they might encounter, talking about how do you sit and listen to someone without interjecting, too much of yourself. I mean, we do want them to interject themselves, but, how do you sit back and let this person do the talking kind of thing? And I think that's the best part of the entire thing. But we talk about suicide, we talk about depression, talk about all those things that they might see in one of those interactions with someone. What do they do with that? How do they come back and talk to us about it? Because we're always available for that. We don't want people out there being counselors. That's not what we're asking for. We're asking people to be out there and just be a friend.
And be a friend.
Yeah.
So, and knowing what those red flags are critical. And
Correct.
I think all of us, I believe, in Yavapai County, whatever business you're in, should have training on suicide.
That's a really good idea.
Because there's
Yes.
red flags that could come up,
Right.
I know
Well,
this.
how about for yourself?
Yeah.
What if it's for yourself? What is it?
Yeah.
What is it that you can notice in yourself? Well, all of a sudden I lose interest in the hobbies I always loved.
Good
And I'm
point.
sitting in front of TV too much.
Yeah.
Okay? Or I start to have back and pain issues, which are very unique to people in the older adults who are then having issues with depression.
Interesting.
Headaches
Yeah.
can sometimes be a sign of depression.
Sleeping too much.
Yes, or sleeping too little. All of those things, gaining weight, losing weight. All of those things that somehow physiologically we start to look at ourselves and we start to say, something's wrong with me. And it could be depression. The other thing is confusion. Sometimes people think that they have the beginnings of dementia and they don't want to go to their doctor.
Scared.
And they start experiencing confusion. Yeah. Confusion can be a sign of depression.
You know, it's interesting you brought that up. I was at a store the other day, and someone found out I was in aging, and they wanted to ask me about, well, you know, the other day I was at the intersection, and I didn't know where I was. And, you know, they were frightened by it. And I said, well, what's going on in your life right now? Well, they just went through a divorce. I'm like, okay, let's talk about the stress that you're under.
Absolutely.
And that can also create that confusion and all these other things. I just like to say my files are full, you know, because we're older and they're full.
Yeah.
But yeah, being self-aware I think is really critical. So not only should our workforce be trained for themselves, but also for the people that they interact with.
Right.
If you notice a change with somebody that comes into the store and usually comes in well coiffured, lovely, makeup on, whatever, if that's their norm, and then they come in all disheveled, that's a big red flag. And I think, you know...
They come in with their pajamas on, right?
Yeah, you're like...
Wait.
Something's wrong with Marge. Something's wrong with Marge. You know, and that's community. So what's your number one more time? Terri Roza?
It is, Terri Roza, 928-445-5211, extension 2672.
So for more information about the Senior Peer Program, information about depression in older adults, ways to get involved, you know, you need to call Terri Roza. And Terri, thank you so much for being with us today.
It's just wonderful, my dear.
Appreciate it, and appreciate you joining us for our show. Again, I'm Mary Beals-Luedtke. This is Senior Moments, Successful Aging. Until next time.